Welcome viewers to the MOOC's online course on Introducing Indian Art and Appreciation. This is the second module of the first section. We have already studied the first module, which dealt on the geographical expanse of India in the context of Indian art and culture. In this module, we shall be looking at another very important aspect of studying Indian art, that is chronology. Now, before we move on, I would like to very briefly discuss a very interesting problem of dating of Indian art objects. From Mughal period onwards, we do have a huge number of artworks which can be dated very securely because of very strong historical evidences, because of very convincing historical and archaeological evidences. Datings can be done very convincingly with regard to certain art objects. Prior to Mughal period, we have come across various monuments, temple structures, art objects like sculptures and paintings, which are a kind of enigma for art historians, because often or more often than not, most of these art objects do not carry any date along with them. They are not dated works of art, and that is pretty normal, because in ancient art, who would, after finishing their artwork, put a date on their artwork or behind the sculpture or beneath the painting? For example, go to Ajanta frescoes located in Maharashtra. Try to find out at least one date from the entire range of Ajanta paintings. You will not get a single one. It is such a rich repository of paintings and sculptures, yet there is not a single panel painting or sculpture which has a date inscribed on it. Go to Mahabalipuram, go to Konark Sun Temple at Orissa, go to Khajuraho, go to Ellora. None of these very famous monuments, temples, cave architectures, or none of these very well known sculptures or paintings actually have dates inscribed on their artwork. So, it is up to the art historians to find out the date. So, dating is a big issue. You need to have enough archaeological and historical evidences and supporting evidences in order to ascertain a date. Beside this, there is also this issue of chronology, because we know Indian art has developed over a period of time, passing through a chronological range of, let us say, dynasties, periods, various phases. Hence, almost the way we tried to tune ourselves in our first lecture to be able to locate artwork in proper location, similarly, we need to tune ourselves to locate artworks in their proper time period. Even if we can't do it, but we should create an awareness so that the moment we know the date of a certain period or certain work of art, for example, the moment you come to know that the most of the very famous Ajanta paintings were painted around 5th century AD, this time itself should ring a bell. It should tell you a lot about the cultural and historical context. So, like the geographical expanse, the chronology of Indian art too has a checkered history and rich with diversity. the mainstream Indian art history is full of different dynasties, and this is what makes the chronology very important. And the different dynasties are ruled by different kings with different mindsets, and therefore, because of their differences in the priorities, cultural scenarios also changed along with the chronology, because the chronology changed along with the dynastic changes. And let me tell you at this point that this mainstream history of Indian art is often known as the dynastic history of Indian art, because each of these very famous periods in Indian art history, whether it is Shunga art or Mauryan art or Gupta art, they all belong to any one particular dynasty. It means each of these periods was actually patronized by a particular ruling class. So, in most of these cases, the periodical changes in the ruling class had a visible influence on the art of the given time. In other words, the specific dynasties or rulers, while patronizing the art of their period, also influenced the form and content of the art, be it a sculpture, architecture, painting, decorative art or functional art. And this is one reason, one of the very important reasons why we should have a fairly good knowledge about the chronology, because chronology is not simply about dating, it is not simply about different time periods, because different time periods immediately imply a different cultural, political or a ruling system. Hence, we can assume that a different ruling system, a different dynastic period may have some kind of influence of the art that it has produced. So, that is why ancient and medieval art of India is often called the dynastic art of India. Of course, that does not mean that the rulers and their dynasties completely control the art. Sometimes, in certain cases we have seen the rulers, who are also known as patrons of art, control the art more directly. For example, King Ashoka, he did control the art of his Mauryan period more directly than many others who were patrons, but they let or allow, they did allow their artists to work freely and independently. The society and its aspirations also had a significant role to play along with the other factors like religion and individual artistic talents and the available technology of art production. Apart from the geographical diversity, which we had already discussed in the first module, the chronological changes also led to a culture of India that is not only one of the oldest in the world, but also rich and diverse in its artistic productions. That is a very good positive impact of chronology on the history of Indian art. Because of the dynastic changes that kept happening in Indian chronology, we are fortunate that we get different kinds of artworks in terms of their style, in terms of their features and in terms of their content. For example, the Shunga rulers of Shunga dynasty, they were great patrons of Buddhism, right. The Shunga dynasty was followed by Kushana dynasty. They were also great patrons of Buddhism. So, most of the artworks, sculptures that we get from these two periods happen to be Buddhist sculptures pertaining to Buddhist ideology, Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist iconography. Now, we know that Kushana period was followed by Gupta period. The Gupta kings initially also patronized Buddhism, hence we do have some very famous, some wonderful sculptures of Buddha and Bodhisattva made in Mathura and Sarnath from Gupta period. But at the same time, gradually the Gupta rulers also began to patronize the Brahmanical religion which is also known as the Hindu religion. As a result, from Gupta period, we also get to see some beautiful sculptures pertaining to or belonging to the Brahmanical religion, some wonderful architectural pieces directly belonging to the Hindu religion. Now, this would not have happened if the Gupta king or the Gupta kings did not patronize Hinduism. So, patronization and hence chronology in the larger sense of the term appears to be very important in shaping the art of a certain period. And if we look at the beginning of Indian chronology, we can always say safely that let us begin the Indian art chronology not from Indus Valley civilization, but from the rock shelters of Bhimbetka, which has been dated safely between 9000 and 7000 BC. It is possible, let us keep all the options open. It is possible that a few years down the line, somebody discovers another prehistoric site which is even earlier, even more ancient than this one. So, our chronology will keep expanding. This is to say that chronology is not given, chronology is gradually discovered. As we keep researching, as we keep studying Indian art, our chronology also keeps expanding. Just one example. For a long time we knew that after the prehistoric period, that is the Bhimbetka phase of 10,000, 9,000 BC, the first important civilization that happened to flourish in the Indian subcontinent was Indus Valley civilization, which started around 3000 BC and went on till 1700 BC. But it was only very recently, that is 30-40 years back, that another culture very close in character and also in terms of its artistic products to Indus Valley civilization, even very close geographically, is Mehergarh culture, which flourished between 7000 BC and 3300 BC. And the moment Mehergarh culture was discovered, our chronology expanded. So, now we cannot say that the earliest civilization in the Indian subcontinent is Indus Valley civilization. We have to add, we have to include Mehergarh culture as well. And the moment we add Mehergarh culture, then coming to our previous module on geographical expansion, we need to say that even geographically we need to expand our history of Indian art. Why? Mehergarh culture flourished not within present India, not even within Pakistan, where Mohenjo-daro culture flourished, but it flourished further northwest in the present Afghanistan, along the river of Baluchistan, along the river of Bolan in Baluchistan. This particular civilization flourished. So, as our chronology kept expanding due to the discoveries of new sites, our geographical area of Indian art also keeps expanding correspondingly. Now, Indian culture, because of its chronological variety, was molded throughout the various eras of history, because the chronology can be divided into various eras. As far as the early part is concerned, it is still simpler. We can say that it begins with Bhimbetka, followed by Mehergarh culture, followed by Indus Valley civilization. If you want to go into the details, you can even divide Indus Valley civilization into early Harappan, mature Harappan, so on and so forth. Then we come across another culturally very rich phase in Indian history known as the Vedic period, which started around 1700 BC and went up to 500 BC. Though this Vedic period is not very significant in terms of its art productions, but it did shape the Indian culture very significantly, and during this time, though we have not come across much examples of sculpture, not at all any example of painting, but we have come across various other functional objects like potteries, even architectural ruins from this period. Vedic period too can be divided into certain subdivisions like early Vedic, later Vedic, etc., etc. Then this part of chronology was followed by very significant dates and times where some developments, very important developments within the political situation of India took place. For example, 600 BC, around 600 BC, the formation of 16 Mahajanapadas. It is important because now India moved away from a larger civilizational process to smaller kingdoms, smaller principalities, smaller areas under the control of individual kings and monarchs. So, this part is very, very important as far as the later developments of Indian art history is concerned. Now, ancient India as it is known within the context of Indian art history can also have subdivisions like Mauryan period, Shunga period, Kushana period, Gupta period. These 4 periods have very strong and very clear time period. Deliberately, I have not kept the time periods visible in my note, and I want you to get the time periods and put them along. And please find out yourself what was the Mauryan time period followed by the Shunga, Kushana and Gupta period. After Gupta period, again we come across another very strange situation in Indian chronology, because we cannot very specifically say or name any particular period. So, if you ask me that Gupta period is followed by which period, I will not have any one singular answer. I will have to say it is a post Gupta period, because during this phase you come across not one powerful singular authority or dynasty, but you come across several authorities, several political ruling classes ruling in different regions all over India. And that is why we come across these names of Chalukyan, then Chandalas, then Ganga dynasty, Rashtrakutas, so on and so forth. Another major breakthrough that appeared in the chronology of Indian art is the Sultanate and the Mughal period. Roughly 12th century AD is the beginning of the Sultanate period, and this is the time when you get to see very different kinds of buildings and paintings are coming up. Sultanate period was followed by the Mughal period, which started around 16th century, and it was pretty active and very powerful till the advent of the British. And from the British period, it is a different history altogether, which we shall study when we will look at the modern art in the later module. So, coming back to images, once again, instead of going to the location, now let us look at the chronology, that is the various time periods each of these artworks belong to originally. For example, you have already seen this image in the first module, very famous priest head which belongs to the Harappan culture, hence it should be in between 3000 and 1500 BC. This famous monument known as the Sanchi Stupa belongs to the Shunga dynasty and built around 1st century AD. So, different time brackets not only suggest different cultures and different ruling classes, but different time brackets also suggest different artworks in character, followed by again this famous sculpture of Bodhisattva from Gandhara, which belongs to the Kushana period, which followed the Shunga period. And as I have already discussed, from the same Kushana period, we get another sculpture of Buddha. Chronologically, they belong to the same time bracket, but locationally they belong to two different cultures. Whereas the earlier one was from Gandhara, this one is from Mathura. This is from Mahabalipuram. Slightly later in terms of chronology, because this belongs to 7th century AD, but not very far away from the Gupta time period, which flourished in 5th century AD. So, within 200 years in a different location down south, we get to see the emergence of another brilliant culture, which was ruled by the Pallava dynasty. This piece of relief sculpture is from the Sun Temple, Konark, Orissa, which is roughly around 11th to 12th century AD. Then we can briefly also look at a few examples of painting, just to get an idea of the chronology of various specimens of Indian art. For example, this manuscript painting belonging to the Jain religion is from 14th century AD. Compared to this one, which is a Rajput painting belonging to the Himachal Pradesh region, and this was painted around 17th century or maybe early 18th century AD. So, the chronological spread, even when you look at some random specimens from Indian art, you get to see a chronological spread, like the way you get to see a geographical spread. Now, this geographical spread and the chronological spread really help us to see Indian art not as a monolithic history, but as a history which is very colorful, which is full of diversity and full of multiplicity. For example, after having seen quite a few examples of Buddhist art and a couple of examples from Hindu art and Jain art, in the same Indian land, we also come across something like this, the famous Taj Mahal. This was built during the time of Shah Jahan, as you all know, who was one of the greatest Mughal kings. So, not only Taj Mahal reflects a different architectural concept, a different cultural concept, but it also reflects a different dynastic culture. And this is what I want to draw your attention to, because chronology is not just memorizing dates or time brackets. The moment you feel yourself comfortable with chronology, you know that now you will be able to have an immediate grasp over the cultural connotation of chronology. So, chronology or time periods immediately imply certain cultural connotation, certain contextual suggestions, which help us to understand and appreciate Indian art. Now, to wind up the chronological discussion, let me also tell you there is another very big section, a huge aspect of Indian art which is beyond chronology, which can be termed as timeless art or timeless art traditions. I know some of you have already guessed, we are talking about the long and continuous indigenous tradition of Indian folk art. Whereas, when you look at a Buddha sculpture from Gupta period, immediately you can say, you can look at that this is from Gupta period. But when you look at plenty of terracotta toys, dolls, wall paintings, floor paintings happening in different parts of India, you can of course say that this floor decoration or this mandala is from Rajasthan, this kolam is from South India, this alpona is from Bengal, but these artworks do not have anything very specific about their time origin. I mean that alpona that you are doing today may have a strong tradition, so strong that we can safely assume that a similar alpana is going on as a part of your tradition maybe for last 1000-2000 years. Hence, this whole tradition of indigenous folk art is beyond chronology. They are timeless. Now, let us quickly look at some of these images. For example, this very simple toy of a mother and child. We do not really need to know when this particular toy was made, because this could be made now, this could be made even 10 years back, this could be made even 200 years back, because this particular form and the culture that produces it, they do not adhere to any specific dynasty, hence they do not adhere or follow any specific time bracket. Look at any of these folk toys or dolls, they will all have the same character of being timeless. Look at these floor decorations being done by a woman in a village. Maybe similar floor decorations were there even 500 or 1000 years back. So, some of these specimens, and there are many such specimens from Bengal, from other parts of India, the spot painting from Bengal or the floor decorations, they all have the same character, that they do not conform to any particular time bracket. So, to wind up, I can give you one brilliant example of a terracotta toy, which is of course fairly contemporary, maybe made some 100 years back. But look at this one, which is pretty similar to the earlier one, whereas the first one is a 19th century terracotta toy. The second one is a third century BC. It is very old. This almost belongs to Harappan period. So, because it is from Harappan period, we can still ascertain a particular time period, but what about this one? These kind of terracotta toys, these kind of specimens coming from our folk traditions, they do not belong to any particular time period, hence they are timeless. Thank you.